Hello everyone, welcome in. Before we get into the latest from 10th Woman in regards to the medical records leak, I will do a quick timeline recap. On June 11th, the medical records in the Alexee Trevizo case are posted for the first time by 10th Woman. On July 27th, the internet finds out 10th Woman is a witness on Alexee's witness list in the criminal case. When I began this investigation, I had not found the unredacted version of these medical records, and I was unaware of the print date, which left us in the dark as to who could have leaked them. I found the print date, the name of the printer, and for privacy reasons, we will only use the first name of the printer, Renee, and the print date is 4/13/23. From there, I had to wait for a confirmation of my theory, which is that the copy of these medical records that have been leaked online are the court-ordered copy because of the date. Let me explain. The autopsy came back as homicide on March 28, 2023, which would make the investigation into Alexee pick back up, this time as a homicide investigation, at which time the police would want to make sure they properly obtain evidence, so they likely obtained a court order, which is confirmed by the state's attorney at the motion hearing, to get Alexee's medical records from the night of the incident, which would explain why the medical records that we have all seen online were printed 16 days after the autopsy came back, and from there, 12 days after the medical records are printed, the hospital staff interviews start on April 25th, and then 15 days later, Alexee's arrested on May 10th. The timeline seems pretty solid when you think about it from the perspective of the court-ordered medical records theory, that the medical records were definitely printed via court order. Now this is where I catch Melinda in her first attempt to bluff and disprove my theory, which leads to another one in her latest video. But before we get there, just to fill in the timeline, I had made a video about all of this and it was making sense to everyone. 8 days later, in response, 10th Woman posts this video in which she talks about how she has a copy of the preliminary hearing receipt, and that the evidence used against Alexee at her preliminary hearing did not include the medical records, which she tried to use to prove that there were no medical records printed for a court order on April 13th, right? This was a failed attempt because the preliminary hearing receipt, as you can see here, is only using the extremely incriminating evidence against Alexee, not every little piece of evidence that the state or detectives may have obtained at the time. Since the medical records contain no incriminating evidence and they have no place in this hearing, I thought this was an interesting attempt to dismantle the theory, and I thought it was interesting that she cared enough to try and prove that the leaked copy of the medical records were not a court-ordered copy. Another interesting thing about this video is that 10th Woman has never shared this document before this video. She claimed it was not important, which never made sense to me because it is the literal evidence used against Alexee to uphold her charges. So it's arguably the most relevant document in 10th Woman's possession, and she hadn't shared it until she needed to try and prove me wrong, which was just an interesting point. So to continue the timeline, we can jump to the video that I made in this last week. I made these two videos. One is privated and one is still up. In the privated video, we discussed some weird metadata, some deleted files off of 10th Woman's Google Drive, and some of her inconsistent statements. That video was successful for this investigation in the way that the person who gave the first batch of court documents to 10th Woman spoke up and we were able to begin a conversation. In that conversation, I got answers to why the metadata was what it was and why Melinda had deleted the documents, and Melinda's statements still remain inconsistent. So, in that conversation, I was able to obtain these messages. These are the messages between 10th Woman and her source that were in my latest video. This is basically the furthest that I have gotten into seeing anything between the source and 10th Woman. Like I said, I put these messages in my last video because I try to share everything with everyone, no matter if it's good, bad, or ugly for our side. We embrace it. We try to figure it out here on this channel. So with that, yesterday, 10th Woman made a video speaking about the medical records and sharing some more documents that she has held onto and not shared before. So with that being said, we will go through this video and I'm going to break it down, try to figure some things out with you here now.
Okay, so I know everybody has been waiting for an Alexee Trevizo update. Now, I am still waiting for the court records, but I have been holding on to some documents. And at this point, with all of the craziness in the other case, time to take a breather and get back to Alexee's case. I'm going to post something that is going to cause a whole nother stir, being as there has been a lot of speculation, a lot of accusations, a lot of videos being made regarding the medical records. Yes, we're back on that. And I'm going to leak just a little bit of information. We're going to start with this. Does anybody remember when the attorney for the state made this comment in a hearing?
The police department was given the records, but they did apply for a search warrant and obtain records properly by court order. And so a claim of privilege that we did.
This is a report from the Artesia Police Department case files, and it says, I emailed Mr. Gottlieb and requested all of the video from approximately 0100 hours to the time that Ms. Trevizo was airlifted to Loveless Hospital in Roswell. I then met with Cindy Buck, Medical Records. I signed a medical request form, and she released all the medical records for Ms. Trevizo and Baby Doe. The records were scanned and entered into evidence. So all of this was done fairly soon after the incident with Alexee at the hospital. They signed a medical release form, and Cindy Buck handed over the records willingly, without a court order. Now, if there is one in the file, maybe one that came in afterwards, I have yet to see it. If there was one that was requested, I have yet to see it. I've checked with all 4 of my sources, and none of them have seen this warrant or court order for records. Maybe it'll come out later on, I don't know. But as of right now, there doesn't seem to be any, and according to this, there wasn't one. Let's move on.
No, let's pause there. So here are the documents from this video. I'm putting both of them up, even though you've only seen one of them so far, so that I can explain some things before we continue. Just because 10th Woman and whoever her now 4 sources are say that they supposedly have not seen or know of any court order, despite the state's attorney saying that there is one, that does not prove our theory wrong. I bring up this second document that she will get into later, because the thing I want to just point out is these documents do seem to tell a similar story. Still, it has nothing to do with disproving that the particular copy of the medical records that have been leaked are court-ordered, but you do see in this email, it says that Alexee's medical records were accessed improperly twice. The date I'd like to take note of is the 1/30/2023 date. Because if the detective's note is correct, they did indeed access the copies of Alexee's medical records improperly on 1/30/23, because according to New Mexico state law, the detectives need to present a court order for the records. Now, because there's no indication of anything happening in regards to this case until the autopsy comes back as homicide, remember the timeline here, just keep in mind that 10th Woman is still not addressing why her copy, the one given to her by her source, was printed on 4/13/2023, and why in those messages the source seems okay with it coming back on Renee, the person who printed them. If you notice on the letter sent from Artesia General Hospital to Alexee about the breaches of her private health information, they mention a few dates. The date of the audit makes sense because that's the day after 10th Woman posts about the leaked records. The date in January, specifically January 30th, 2023, makes sense as, like I said, the detectives likely obtained a copy of the records that day improperly, aka without a court order, which is why it's mentioned in the letter. And as you can see from this body cam footage, on January 30th, 2023, the detective was definitely conducting business in relation to Alexee's case on that specific day. So that leads me to say this. In my opinion, 10th Woman has been seemingly afraid of the idea that the records she leaked online are the court-ordered copy, based on how she's tried to falsely provide evidence to try and prove my theory wrong, such as that preliminary hearing receipt. I feel like this letter actually proves me right. that there is a copy of Alexee's medical records printed on 4/13/2023. This letter doesn't mention that copy, which is interesting because that means either this copy was printed with Alexee's authorization or by court order. Those are the only two options. We will discuss this more at the end, but I feel like this vindicates the court order theory because otherwise those records would be mentioned in this email. So I'm going to let her finish before I keep going on.
So my original source sent me this, and I'm going to read it to you. Dear Ms. Trevizo, I'm writing to you with important information about a breach of your protected health information at Artesia General Hospital. On July 12, 2023, yes, y'all, that date is significant. During an internal audit of our record system, we became aware of an unauthorized access of your patient record. We have completed a thorough review of this matter and have determined that the unauthorized access occurred as follows. An Artesia General employee had access to your electronic medical on two separate occasions, January 30th, 2022 and January 30th, 2023 and June 22nd, 2023. When doing so was not necessary to the performance of the employee's job. So that audit was done on July 12th, which is 24 hours after I released the medical records publicly. Now, if Gary Mitchell has not seen this letter, Mr. Mitchell, you've seen it now.
I'm only pausing here to point out that I find it odd that she thinks that a letter addressed to Gary's client, Alexee, in regards to HIPAA violations has not been shown to him for some reason. How and why would Team Trevizo keep that from their attorney when they're literally suing the hospital for HIPAA violations and wrongful death? I just think that's weird. Anyways, continue.
Now, around the time that I had shared the medical records, my source had sent me a message. In that message, they said that this hospital is the worst for confidentiality. Apparently, that is true. Based on all of this information, Artesia General has some serious confidentiality issues, some serious records management issues. And it seems Artesia Police is not too far behind.
So I think it's a bit disingenuous and hypocritical for an employee of Artesia General Hospital who is giving a random lady on TikTok all of this information to say that Artesia General Hospital has a confidentiality issue. It sounds like this leaker has a confidentiality issue themselves to me, not the hospital as a whole. So with that being said, let's examine what she said more closely. She's saying that because the police in an active investigation got medical records without a court order, that is a confidentiality issue. So if so, here is the chart for that type of HIPAA violation. It's a tier 2 at worst and would make sense why the state's attorney made sure to get a court order to get the medical records once this was officially a homicide investigation and charges, right? What I am more interested in here is this date, June 22nd, 2023, because that is just days after this case starts going viral. So who accessed it then and why? That is something we do not know. But I find that date more interesting because it doesn't match the date of the leaked records. So what were they looking for and why'd they do this? We do not know. All we do know is that someone accessed Alexee's records improperly in the midst of this case going viral online.
Again, we're still waiting on the results of the court filings to determine what the judge is going to suppress and not suppress. I don't know what's taken so long. The judge has said she would respond to that within a week, but here we are weeks later. So once that comes, I will go ahead and post that and we'll discuss it.
Alright, so it's interesting to me that she brought up the fact that we are still waiting on the judge's decision on evidence. As you may remember from some of my videos where we go over the motions and responses to the motions, I went through some of the case law and the rules of evidence, and we saw that most of this evidence should be allowed in, and only a few statements are questionable in regards to like the care that Alexee got before the crime was committed and before she went into the bathroom, right? So with that being said, it could be possible that the findings of fact either from Gary or the state mentioned the leaking of the medical records. Now, it would be especially important for that issue to be resolved should the leaked medical records be a court-ordered copy especially, right? It is possible that the judge is seeking to find out more about the leaking of the medical records before making this final decision, because should she allow them in and then there is some kind of chain of custody issue, especially on the state's behalf for how they were leaked, that could cause a host of issues, of which I will explain now. Should my theory be correct, which I think it is, and the medical records are indeed the court-ordered copy, which I feel I'm kind of proved correct with this email and the newest document, because there is no mention of the print date of the leaked copy. Now, the state would want to get signed statements by everyone who had contact with that document, everyone in the chain of custody, right? And have them swear that they did not leak it under oath, obviously, and should they lie, that would be committing perjury. If the leaked copy is the court-ordered copy, it would have went from the person who printed them to the detective, scanned in, as you saw from the detective's notes, and only accessible by the state, the judge, and eventually Team Trevizo once Alexee's attorney received discovery at the end of May. Did a hospital worker sneak photos of these medical records when they were being printed for the detectives via court order, and then save them, give them to 10th woman eventually? If so, that would be a few different crimes, tampering with evidence, and its own criminal penalties for the HIPAA violations. As I've said from the beginning, I found that to be extremely unbelievable. Now that we have a little bit more information, we can dive deeper. First, now we know the detectives scan their paper documents in. For those of you who have seen the medical records, and I've made an effort to keep them off of my channel, but if you haven't seen them, they are up on 10th Woman's Google Drive and other places online. You can see the medical records are definitely a scanned document. Secondly, there is still no account for this print date in the email from the hospital, which means the leaked records were obtained either with Alexee's authorization or by court order. The fact that 10th Woman has tried to deny and failed. Third, this email in and of itself is proof that 10th Woman's source is close enough to the Trevizos to have had them share this email, or the source also illegally accessed this email as well as the medical records for their own use and shared it all. How would someone get access to this email unless they know Alexee and it was shared by Team Trevizo, or they are just constantly accessing Alexee's medical information and communications with this hospital, or saved a copy of it when they sent it themselves? I want to take this moment to say sometimes what seem to be setbacks in this investigation turn out to give us more and more information. It's important to keep asking questions and highlighting these inconsistencies. On my last video, many of you commented and felt like there was still a Team Trevizo connection to the leaking of these documents, and that something bigger is going on here than just a person giving 10th Woman these records. If these are indeed court-ordered documents, likely all under seal because they are privileged to anyone not authorized to access them, that opens this situation up to way more implications than just gossip from a hospital and a lady on TikTok. You see, the chain of custody on the state's evidence is limited. Like I've said earlier, printed for the detectives, scanned in, goes to the state's attorneys and the defense attorneys after discovery. But here are the two paths that both have issues in their own ways. If a medical worker acted alone in all of this and gave everything to 10th Woman, that has serious criminal charges that accompany that. As you can see here, I think it could possibly, and most likely is, all the way up to tier 3 because it was for their own personal gain or with malicious intent, which was to give it to someone to have it leaked online. And then on the other hand, if our theory is correct that this leak somehow originated with Team Trevizo, and these are indeed the court-ordered copy of the medical records, that also has really bad implications for Team Trevizo, ones that I have tried to explain to 10th Woman as we have spoken throughout this investigation. Since 10th Woman has said she would never give up her source and would attempt to claim press privilege on the stand when asked who her source was, I told her all the surrounding information technically implicates Team Trevizo and that would hurt her both in her criminal case and the civil case, right? I tried to tell 10th Woman that the jury would not like that idea, that if, it could be implicated that these came from Team Trevizo, that would be used against Alexee in the minds of the jury. And here is a small clip from a criminal defense attorney, Bruce Rivers, talking about witness tampering allegations in a different murder case, but just how seriously juries do actually take this kind of thing.
This is just incredibly damaging evidence. It really is. I mean, I just can't tell you how you lie to a jury, or a jury thinks that you're doing something nefarious, in order to get benefit, yourself in the trial to get a better outcome. They're going to use that and use it harshly. And any inference that you have throughout the rest of the trial will be drawn against you. That is a hard and fast rule.
So as you can see, if this is from Team Trevizo and they are the court-ordered copy, this does not look good for Alexee in either case, as it can look to the outside that they've tried to tamper with evidence and have a witness, aka 10th woman, on the witness list who is possibly working with them, if not very close to the Trevizos, and that could have some hints of legal games being played here in a case that we all know the evidence leads to a guilty conviction, which also implicates all the more reason for someone to do something shady. Trust me when I say that I'm not giving up on this investigation until the truth comes out, because if there is any implications of attempted obstruction of justice, those deserve to be brought to light, as these charges are brought against Alexee not maliciously, but because they deserve to be in order to get justice for baby Alex. More eyes now than ever are looking to this issue, and they are not easing up on getting to the truth. I have another video coming soon where we will go over a couple of interviews with hospital staff, to which fill a bit of time that we don't have on camera, and they discuss some statements that are really interesting and I think are some great statements for the state to use against Alexee, so that will be coming out soon. But as for now, I will let you form your own opinions as to where you think these records came from, and as always, I will keep bringing you all the legal updates on this case. Fingers crossed on the evidence to come back soon, or that the judge is also investigating this leak and that is the reason for the holdup on this evidence. Either way, thank you so much for making it this far. If you're interested in following this case to trial, please subscribe, as I'll be covering it all along the way with a legal bent. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible because I really do love the conversation. I will see you in the next video. It's your girl Friday. Okay, bye.